I lost a really good rant on my first take, so now I've deleted everything. Hopefully we won't have any Homer Simpson dope moments. All right, so what I wanted to start with is a dumb thing and a smart thing. The dumb thing is I saw a dumb comic on Twitter with a really stupid point that made me mad. And when I saw the dumb comic that made me mad, I wanted to make a YouTube video where I would go through the comic panel by panel and I would explain to you exactly why it's so dumb and why this dumb comic makes me mad. And I stopped myself from doing this from time to time because what I kind of realize is I have had this argument before, word for word, and that's kind of why it's frustrating. Why is it that years go by and the national conversation doesn't seem to advance? Why are there still these really dumb arguments being repeated over and over and over again? And you kind of just have to like swallow that and just accept that, you know, the world's rough, kid. Toughen up. But also, like I try to be patient because maybe like for some younger people, this is their first rodeo. But the problem it's making me think about, and I've actually been thinking about this problem a lot recently, is are we all screwed? Is YouTube like not a platform to actually help a national conversation go on? Are people just going to ignore it and listen to their own little circle? Are we going to split farther and farther? Is the entire Western civilization going to collapse, right? So that's the depressing thought which comes from seeing dumb comics on the internet that make me mad. And then the smart thing was I'm listening to the Tolkien Professor again. After finishing reading The Hobbit, I started The Lord of the Rings. I really like the Tolkien Professor. I think he kind of gets Tolkien, and it's making me think a lot. Just really quick, I hate the concept of the death of the author, but I feel like it can be useful in certain situations. I just hate whenever people bring up death of the author because I feel like the author actually is important. Without the author, there's no work to talk about. And the Tolkien Professor actually makes me think about it in a new way, where he'll explain, here's Tolkien's perspective on literature. And you'll realize, oh, okay, yeah, it's not good to just be so obsessed about the author that you forget to actually read the book that the author wrote. Like, I don't care what J.R.R. Tolkien had for breakfast on the Saturday morning when he started writing, but I should care about the book a little bit more than what he had for breakfast, right? But I shouldn't also just like throw Tolkien into the dustbin and forget all about him. Like, if I want to understand what Tolkien wrote, maybe a good starting point is to listen to what Tolkien said about his own work and then read it for myself, right? So it's almost like by listening to a smart person talk about literature, it's helping me like work through other problems I've had looking at art. And the Tolkien Professor is just a really good example of like a guy who likes Tolkien. He kind of figured out, hey, there's this podcast revolution, and I can put all my cool college lectures on the internet. So he's a nerd. He talks a little fast, but if you weren't happy with the Tolkien biopic, or if you just want like a good framework to think about Tolkien and hear good language to talk about literature, check out the Tolkien Professor. Because what I'm kind of hoping is maybe we can use literature to talk about the things where the dumb outrage internet culture is just in an endless cycle of repeating itself over and over and over again. Like there's always going to be a dumb comic on the internet that's really dumb and makes you mad. It's going to have 100,000 likes and retweets, and that's going to make you even madder. And you're going to see a comic just like it in another month, and you're always going to be mad. So maybe if you use literature, you can kind of come at. Maybe you can speak across the aisle if someone actually resonates with the literature you resonate with. And The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess manga, this is an all-time great. This is a highest recommendation. They're only halfway through it, and I'm so excited. I'm caught up. I'm not reading it 10 years after it came out. I'll get to read the next volume right when it comes out and be all hip and relevant. But so I don't know if they're going to stick the landing, but based on the first 5 volumes, this is a classic. This belongs in everyone's library, even if you're not a big Legend of Zelda franchise guy. Even if you... I love their first 10 volumes. I recommend those to parents. The one criticism I have of their first 10 volumes is they feel a little fanficky. The one I always remember is like the Ocarina of Time one. They had this story where he raised a little baby dragon, and then he goes forward in time, and the little baby dragon is the boss from the video game. And I kind of remember thinking, okay, that's kind of cute. Like, I don't buy that that doesn't feel like it fits with the video game at all. But it's just kind of like a cute little, fanficky idea that I enjoy. Twilight Princess. Everything they're doing with Twilight Princess that's original to them adds so much. Like, I want this to be canon. These manga technically aren't canon. I want this to be canon because not only are they nailing what's good about the original game, they're adding just what they need to add to give this some fresh, its own fresh flavor and kind of pull out some of the themes from the video game that don't really get developed. It's excellent writing. It's their artistic best work too. I'm kind of starting to look at this as something that's approaching, it's simpler than the Lord of the Rings. It's not that dense, rich language of J.R.R. Tolkien, but I'm looking at this as such a great work of art that it kind of belongs in the tier of The Hobbit, where it's children's literature with excellent pacing, themes, and building. And one of the things that blew my mind is there was a cool little setup in Volume 1 that gets a payoff in Volume 5 that I want to show you. So let's just start flipping through it. So one of their original ideas is that there's a parallel between Princess Zelda and Princess Midna, which you could probably, just obviously pick up in the game, like two princesses. They both are trapped in the realm of Twilight. And so Akira Himekawa, they kind of get the very simple idea of what if these two knew each other as children and had a childhood relationship, which is a very, very simple addition, but it helps so much because now it kind of gives us some subtext that, okay, these two actually know each other. They actually have a relationship to each other, and then that relationship adds some flavor to the grown-up versions of the characters. Where one of my problems with Zelda in the game is she's a bit of a blank slate. You don't get too much about her. And what this helps do is this helps also reinforce kind of like the cool political theme of the war between the world of light and the world of shadow. It kind of helps explain why Midna is so cynical and she dislikes the world of light in the games. And because of that, it's now adding to not just Link's character growth and his transformation as a character, but Midna's growth and transformation as a character. Now, in all of the first 4 volumes I've talked about, Link has been getting his butt kicked and he's been getting mad disrespect, and he's slowly but surely becoming a hero. One of the things I love about this is I enjoy, like talking about meta narratives like the hero's journey, right? That's kind of cool. But I think the particulars of a story affect a lot, like how you get absorbed into the world. So, for example, some versions of Link's character, he's a bit more of a lunkhead. He's a bit more of a little kid. The Twilight Princess version of Link is a bit more mature at the start of his journey, which is a different kind of challenge. Like, if he was a 16-year-old acting like a 10-year-old, it would feel a little weird. Like, why is he so emotionally immature for his age? So they had the challenge of, we have to start with a pretty mature character and still give him a hero's journey and still build him up into a hero. So it was less about like immature kid learns to become a hero so much as it was a mature young man, with some really decent qualities, gets his butt kicked and has this horrible fate befall him. And basically his whole life is devoted now to trying to fix what was done to him and help those who were hurt so that he can finally become the hero. And maybe one of the interesting things is, when does the hero become the hero? Do they become the hero at the climax, right before they deliver the killing blow to the enemy? Or do they have to become the hero before their journey even begins? And, the way you could pace it either way, and you could make it work either way. But because this is a longer journey, he has his kind of like climactic moment where he accepts his destiny, he accepts his role as the hero mid-journey. And now the whole rest of the journey is going to be dumping on him further, but he's reached the point where he has this emotional climax where he's finally ready to kind of like accept his destiny, accept his purpose. So like artistic cue that this is a big important moment. I think of my boy Lyle Convoy talking about how the Sword of Omens is rooted in Arthurian legend. Its sole purpose is to defeat evil. It's this great, powerful, primal idea of the sword and the stone that is the evil's bane and is the symbol of the hero's strength. And it gets all of that emotional power from just the ringer that Link has been through. Emotional roller coaster ride in volume after volume, and finally he gets to have his moment. And when he gets his moment, you feel so good for him. Midna, whose character is that she's kind of cynical, she's kind of jaded, she kind of like teases him almost sadistically. she grows too because now she's starting to respect him. She's starting to admire his heroism. There's even like this like motif as he's drawing the sword of her just like staring in stunned silence at how awesome Link looks, which is a contrast to her earlier cynical behavior. And it's continuing. I'll get to that later, but it's building on this great theme all the way from Volume 1 to Volume 5. This is a nice little like Zelda nerd moment where I can't start spurging out about the Legend of Zelda timeline or we'd be here all day, but I used to follow the Legend of Zelda timeline debates really closely right up until Skyward Sword, and I said, I've had enough of this. Split timelines and multiverses, are you kidding me? So I'm way behind on my Zelda timeline knowledge, but basically, I was always fascinated because it was this really interesting concept of time travel where one action of time travel creates two separate timelines where the fate of the world is essentially dependent upon one small kind of compassionate decision. So it makes this great meta-narrative where not only are the games and the individual stories interesting, but you're even starting to see how like past stories are affecting the current story. So they do this great thing where Skull Kid shows up, who you'll probably recognize from Majora's Mask, and they have him reference recognizing Link, which unless the theory's been changed. When I played this game, the prevailing theory was that the deceased warrior was the hero from Ocarina of Time, kind of returned as a ghost. I don't know if some Zelda nerd fact channel has fact checked that since, but seeing Skull Kid show up and just recognize Link is a really great additional idea. I think it's original to the manga that just helps tie everything together. It's really beautiful because it's even giving us like a nice little narrative bow on top of Majora's Mask. And then flashing forward. Okay, so here's like that motif of like Midna staring at him in stunned silence. And I'll get to the line later because that's her dialogue is what's really making me think. Oh, I also marked this because there's just this cute little thing where he's talking and they do two speech balloons and they indicate the change of expression in the speech balloon, which is great because it's kind of awkward if he says something happy and then he says something embarrassed, but his face isn't embarrassed. So that's just a nice little motif for like indicating a change of expression without drawing a whole nother panel. Nice little idea. All right. So after, again, him finally getting to look super cool and heroic after basically 4 volumes of him getting his butt kicked, Midna says, yeah, you no longer seem to feel fear. You're a little scary. So the motif this is continuing is all the way back in Volume 1. There's this little girl in the village. I think her name's maybe Mary or something. And she's like 13. She's just starting to have like her first little girl, puppy dog crush on Link because he's the big, cool boy in the village. He's kind of like the big, nice big brother to all the kids in the village. And at some point, Link yells at the kids, no, you must never go into the darkness. And he raises his voice. And then Mary kind of like, she does this like little girly blush. And she says, oh, I like it when a guy gets mad, right? So the kind of theme of it is Link is this cool big brother guy. He is a very masculine young man, right? Even at the start of his journey, before he gets put through the ringer. And there's this thing that's so pure. It's so actually sweetly romantic that girls like confident, good young men who become heroes. Like there's something attractive about that. There's something kind of primally attractive and interesting about a man who's so strong and so confident in himself that he's almost kind of terrifying in a way. And Midna, who's been roasting him this whole time, is maybe starting to feel a little bit of that, girlish charm. Oh, wow. So I want to bring this back to Jane Austen, right? Because I love like randomly bringing up Jane Austen in the middle of Legend of Zelda discussions. I read Persuasion years ago. I just rewatched the BBC drama of Persuasion. Jane Austen, because she paid attention to human beings, when she wrote romances, they're not like girly little, oh my, he batted his eyes. All of her romances are based on these really intellectual conversations, which is kind of what makes them hard to read. But you could dumb it all down to, hey girls, don't be brainless. Be smart and read books, girls. And if you want a good man who's smart and read books, well, guess what? If he's a smart man who reads books, he wants a girl who's smart and read books. Smart guys who read books, they don't want dummy girls. They want smart girls who read books, right? And so the whole point is appreciate the other gender. Don't just be like defined by your own gender, and don't just hate the other gender. Pay attention to them, appreciate their qualities. And this is a manga written by two women who appreciate what the kind of the heroic primal story of masculine virtue is. And because they love that, they can tell that story with so much enthusiasm. They get the character, they get the sword and the stone side of this. They get that you can sort of dumb down the appeal of Legend of Zelda to become a man, save the princess. And then, of course, all of the love of their craft is into the detail of the art, and gradually building up the character and having him face successively greater challenges and overcome his feelings of shame. This is a masterwork. I want to flash forward to the end. Link has finally drawn the Master Sword. It's a scene appropriate for the climax of the middle stage of the story, so we've given it all our strength. Link has had a hard time, but it's also been a very long journey to this point for those of us creating it. The battles between light and shadow will finally reach a turning point. Please join us for the second half of this adventure. I'm going to pre-order the 6th volume so I can review it the day it comes in the mail. I'm reading this in 1 volume and reviewing it. Probably a greatest of all time contender. In the category of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Check out the Tolkien Professor. Say no to dumb comics on the internet that make you mad because they're so stupid, and you don't like stupid comics on the internet that make you mad, and you want to make an anti-SJW YouTube video about the dumb comics that make you mad. Read good books. You'll feel happier. I'm Normal Marmaduke fan. Like, comment, subscribe. I love you guys, and I'll catch you later.